Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to Football Time Podcast. We're here to continue our college football preview show. We got the Mountain West and the Pac12 with us, as always, is Dynamite. David, are you ready to get into some West Coast football today?
I'm really looking forward to it, starting to get to the big boys here.
Yeah, definitely. So we got the West Coast out here. We're going to start out in the Mountain West. And we're going to start out with the boys from Boise, the dominant team of the Mountain West for, I don't know, the last 20 or so years, pretty much since they've been in the Mountain West. So they're at 8.5 wins. They're 115 to win the conference. Where are you sitting on the Boise State Broncos?
I tell you what, you look at this team on paper, and they're probably top to bottom one of the best 10 teams in the conference. But what I look at this schedule, opener at UCF, third game of the season's got Oklahoma State, fifth game of the season is hosting Nevada. And I just, they get Nevada off their bye week. And I don't know if they come out of this without at least 2, maybe 3 losses in those first 5. And I don't know if they recover for that. And so I'm not as big on Boise State as most people this year.
Yeah, I'm in between here. I think they will be a conference, at least in the conference championship, especially on their side of the bracket where they're in. I go the easier side, but non-conference wise at UCF to open the Oklahoma State game. Now Oklahoma State goes up to Boise. That's never an easy place to play. So that one is a tough one. And then they have that one at BYU, which is also a difficult game to go down in there. And then you mentioned in conference at Colorado State, a little tricky, always tough to go in there, but that one should be handled. That game at the end of the year at San Diego State, probably be a little tricky down there. It might be a little warm in November in San Diego. Right. And I don't know if Boise will be quite ready for the 75-degree weather. The advantages they get with their home field and their weather sort of flip when they go down to San Diego State.
Road game at Fresno, too.
Yes, a road game at Fresno. Offensively, I think this team will be really, really good. Now, they haven't named which quarterback is there, Brockenmeyer or Sears. But I think either way, they're probably okay at the quarterback position. And offensively, weirdly enough, I think they might be a little deficient on the defensive end.
See, I'm also expecting some sort of, I know it's a guy that's come up in this program.
Yes.
First year head coach still, nonetheless. Yeah. So could have some struggles there as well.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to you earlier about Boise is only won 8 games twice in the last 25 years.
Guess what?
And one of them was the first time that Grayson came in there. He came in there and they won 8 games his first season and then proceeded to win 10 games a season. But we'll see if Andy can turn this thing around and have them win over 9. I had them right at 9 wins. I don't really like the conference odds there at 115. I don't think there's a whole lot of value taking a favorite like that, especially on the other side of the bracket where the other teams play, which I think are much, much deeper in that side of the Mountain West.
I'm going to take 8 wins here. I'm going to take the under. I think 8 is the number. I don't think they're going to get to the 9. I think they're going to have those couple early losses at UCF, and I think Oklahoma State may come in and get them. Starting the season 1 and 2 is going to be too rough for them to recover. So I've got them winning 8.
Yeah, I think that's where you see it is that BYU, Oklahoma State, UCF game. If they go 2-1 in that, they probably hit the 9 wins. If they go 1-2, they probably hit the 8 wins. But I do think conference-wise, they'll probably be all right, and we'll probably see them at least in the championship game. Whether they can win that championship game, they got beat last year. So we'll see if they can bounce back and get back to a championship game. All right, next up, probably the co-favorite on there to win the Mountain West, Nevada Wolfpack at 7.5 wins. The offense will be there for sure.
Yes.
Really, really good quarterback play.
Yeah, Carson Strong, best quarterback in the conference.
Great receiver play. Defense, a little suspect. I wouldn't go poor, but I wouldn't go great. And I have some questions whether they can win on the road. They had only 2 road games last year. One of them was at Hawaii, and they lost that one. So we'll see if they have a little bit tougher time this year on the road.
Speaking of road games, they do have to go to Boise.
Yes.
I know it's across the division there, but I love this Nevada team. Like I said, Carson Strong, best quarterback in the conference. I love their receiver group too.
Yes.
Elijah Cooks, who missed most of last season, he's coming back from injury, and they get Romeo Dubes back. So I think their offense is going to be really clicking. If they can get any kind of defense, I think Nevada's going to roll through this schedule pretty well.
Yeah, that would be my other concern with this 7.5. I have them over at 8 wins.
Easy over.
But that at California game, we'll get into California. I don't think either of us quite know what to expect from California. That's a little bit tough. Same with at Kansas State. That's a difficult place to go. You mentioned at Boise, at Fresno, at San Diego State. Those are all sort of difficult games on the road to play in. But I think if they can sort of manage that first half of their schedule, California, Kansas State, Boise State, Fresno, that tail end where it's UNLV, San Jose State, Air Force, and Colorado State, they should be okay. But I think we'll get a good feel about this team early on and where they sit. And probably if Jay Norvell has a really good year, I wonder how long he'll be at the Wolfpack before he probably steps up to a better job.
This team is my favorite. I've got them going 10 wins.
Yeah.
And I actually like the plus 400 to win the conference.
Well, that was plus 400. They are in the harder side of the bracket. You mentioned it. Mm-hmm. San Diego State, San Jose State are also in there. And your Fresno State is in that side. So, I mean, theoretically, there are probably 4 teams on that side of the bracket who legit have at least a shot to take their side, whereas I think the other side were Boise State, since there's maybe 1.5 teams who could win that side of the bracket. But I think we're both on the over here. I think we both really like this team. We were impressed with them last year. The only thing that concerned me was that road loss at Hawaii. And they played sort of a light road schedule last year, and it'll be back to sort of normal this year. And we'll see if that offense can continue to fly under Jay Norvell. All right, we'll move on to next. The Darlings.
Speaking of performing well last year.
The Darlings of the Mountain West, sort of out of nowhere, really. San Jose State ended up actually winning the conference. They sit at 7.5 wins. Were they legit? Do you think they can sort of redo it?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know if it was exactly out of nowhere. The last 3 years, this team's gone from 15.8 points per game to 21.3 points per game to last year, 30.1 points per game. So this offense is really starting to click. They returned a lot of their talent from last year. A ton of seniors on this. One thing I look at, their non-conference schedule is a little rough with at USC and at Western Michigan. That Western Michigan game is pretty intriguing to me. I think that could be a really tough challenge, long travel trip for them, for a solid MAC team. But I like the San Jose State team. I think their schedule is going to be a little bit more challenging and not quite as easy to go undefeated when you're playing 12 as opposed to 7.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to pick up a few losses, but I still like the over here. I think they're going to get the over. I've got them at 8 wins this season.
Yeah, I went over right at 8 wins. I was with you. Last year, their schedule was a little bit easy to start out. Air Force, New Mexico, San Diego State, UNLV, Hawaii. So, I think if you took most of the top teams in that Mountain West Conference, they would have been undefeated going into that. Now you say that, and then those last 2 games, they beat Nevada, then beat Boise State. So, I mean, I think towards the end, they proved that they belonged. Offensively, I don't know if they're quite as good as they let on last year.
Yep.
I do think Nick Starkel, solid quarterback. I don't know about their skill position guys, but I am impressed with their defense. And that, I think, is what people don't sort of know is San Jose State's a good defensive team. They bring back pretty much everybody from that defense. I believe they lost 2 guys who ended up getting drafted in the NFL. But I think that defense will be really, really good again. So I think they go over. I don't know if it's quite as a miracle season as last year on the 7-1. You mentioned the at USC game, which will probably be a fun one to watch. I don't think anyone will be stunned if they beat USC, but I don't think anybody would be stunned if USC hangs 60 on them. We probably don't know what USC we're going to get. I think we'll get into that a little later. The other tricky thing is you mentioned they start out with Southern Utah, which will be really, really good. But then at USC, at Hawaii, at Western Michigan, New Mexico State, then at Colorado State. That's just a monster of a travel schedule early on. Now they do come off a little bit of a breather with that New Mexico State game, but I mean, going at USC, having a bye week, going to Hawaii, coming back from Hawaii, that next week going to Western Michigan, and then coming back home, New Mexico State, at Colorado State. That's just going to be murderous.
A lot of travel.
Something like that Colorado State game where they're at the end of that road trip might end up being a little bit trickier of a game than you would look on. So it's just going to be very interesting to see how this team plays. The other thing I'd say is the matchup with Nevada. They will be going to Nevada this year. So towards the end of the year, that might sort of decide who wins that division. They're at plus 500. Are you as bully on them at plus 500, or do you think not quite as good a value there?
I think Nevada has a much higher chance of winning the conference and just giving up that point there, going to plus 400 instead of 500. I think that's a big difference. It just San Jose State's schedule is a little bit rougher, and I don't think they're quite as consistent offensively as Nevada is.
Yes, definitely so. I don't find a whole lot of value in that 500. I find a little value in your 400 on Nevada, but we'll move on to probably the other team in the Boise State side that maybe could challenge them. I think it'll be tough. Wyoming sits at 7.5 wins here. Have been a pretty consistent team over the last couple of years. But once again, they'll probably be based solely on defense. That offense is probably not something to be pretty to look at. This
is a team that loves to pound the rock and just run the ball. And unfortunately, they can't throw the ball. Yes. So this offense, when they get so one-dimensional that teams can just key and load up the box and pretty much shut that offense down. Now, I do love their defense. Their defensive line is great. They're bringing back 7 of their top 8 defensive linemen with 4 returning opt-outs. They had some good opt-outs that didn't play last year that are big-time players on that defensive line. 21 starters in all. So a lot of returning talent, but that's a theme kind of across the country this year. So I don't know how well that'll actually play out. But I love this defense. If they can get any kind of passing game, they may push Boise in that division. Yeah, basically, I regard them mostly as just an option offense. They don't necessarily run the option, but their quarterback is just basically a runner who can sort of throw. They really just get in I formation a lot of times and pound the ball, trust in their defense. You mentioned their defensive line is really good. Their secondary also will be really, really good. And they get, the added benefit of being in Laramie, Wyoming, and going there pretty much any time outside of August. It is always cold. It is always windy. So the defense always gets a boost. And I think of very favorable schedule. That was the other thing I was going to say. Of the Mountain West teams that we think probably are contenders to fringe contenders, I don't know if we put Wyoming quite in contender status, but I think if things break right, maybe they could get in there. I think a lot of injuries would have to occur to Boise State. Yeah, but it could come down to that November 12th. But that's at Boise. They do go to Boise State, so that'll be difficult. But I mean, their non-conference schedule: Montana State, Northern Illinois, Ball State, Connecticut. Really, Ball State's the only tough game there, and Ball State is coming to them, which probably will be more difficult for Ball State. And then they avoid Nevada on the other side of things. They avoid San Diego State on the other side of things. So I think there are wins there. I put them over that 7.5 at 8, but
I wouldn't be bullish on that. I think it's anywhere from a 6-win team to probably maxed out at 9 wins.
I really wanted to put this team on the over, but I think I've got them at 7.
Yeah.
Just on the under. I think I don't know if that offense is going to be strong enough. I think that Ball State game is going to be a huge challenge, even though it's at home. And I think some of these teams that they play are going to be too good offensively for them to keep up.
Well, I had them winning that whole first slate, and then probably losing that one at Air Force. But
well, there's another team I like that plays. Yes. I've got them losing as well.
And that's sort of, I think that Ball State game, you mentioned it, will be the sort of tipsy-turvy, whether they hit my 8 or your 7, really. So I don't give them like the at Boise State game. As much as they might be able to defend them, Boise State will chew that offense up. And I don't think they can just score enough. But if you're looking for unders, any game played in Laramie, Wyoming, play the under, especially with this team. So Wyoming sits at 7.5, 8-1 to win the conference.
I mean, they are in the easy division.
That's what I mean.
If they can get past Boise,
if they can get past Boise, they don't get tripped up at it. I mean, they'd have to win that game at Air Force. They probably have to win that game at San Jose State. You know, they can't get tripped up by somebody who we probably have a little bit lower class than they are. So that would be the only thing. But I don't know if 8-1's probably that great a value. I think if it was at 10, I'd be a little more frisky on it, but I just even if they got there, I don't know if they could beat those top teams we've already talked about in Boise State, Nevada, and San Jose State. And I think we both have not the same team, but we both have teams in the other division that we probably like a little better than Wyoming as well. All right, we'll move on to the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. I don't know if they're still the Rainbow Warriors, but I always like them as the Rainbow Warriors. Hawaii sits at 6 wins. They have some wins on their schedule that I think they can win, but
New Mexico State twice.
Yes, the random home and home conference.
Yes, very interesting.
New Mexico State. I will say I had to look that up numerous times on a lot of places because I thought it was a typo because I was like, did they mean New Mexico? But the home and home with New Mexico State, little bit different of a Hawaii team, more run based, won't be airing it out. I like this team, but I don't know if I like them to go over this 6-win. I thought their schedule was pretty difficult.
They've got to do everything they can to help this defensive group out. I love their defensive backs. They've got some good corners and safeties on this team, but they still give up way too many points per game. They've got to get that down. A slow-paced offense could help that out. I actually, but outside of that New Mexico State twice, I actually thought it was a pretty tough schedule.
Yes.
Opening up at UCLA and then at Oregon State in week 3. I could see even an Oregon State game at home could win that game. So we'll see. I'm not a big fan of their schedule. I've got them right around their over-under.
Well,
so.
I went push right at 6. If you had to make me make a pick, I'd probably lean under because you mentioned it, their schedule. This team always, struggles on the road because they have to make such a long travel. And it seems like the schedule just did them no favors. It's road, sometimes if they have a couple road games in a row, they stay on the mainland, but it seems like they go back and forth a whole lot. And everybody they play, other than you mentioned New Mexico State, is a very difficult road game. You mentioned at UCLA, you mentioned at Oregon State, they're at Nevada. Now they do get the at Utah State, at UNLV, but that's towards the back end when I think they're already going to start to be a little bit fatigued. And then that last game at Wyoming.
November 27th.
You can mark that down. I will be taking Wyoming in that game for sure because I think going to Laramie on November 27th, I don't think the Hawaiians will enjoy that weather all that much. I can pretty much guarantee it will be 30-mile-an-hour winds and probably ice raining. So anyway, I went with the push because I do think offensively they can really run the ball. You mentioned it with that slow down pace, maybe their defense can hang in there because I do think they have some decently skilled guys and maybe they can control the game and beat up on some of the teams that aren't quite on their level. They do get the double New Mexico State, but that actually might be trickier than we think, even as bad as New Mexico State. It probably is always weird to play somebody twice in a year.
I think the key for them to get in the over here is they're going to have to, I think they're going to need to get either the at Oregon State or they're going to need to beat Colorado State at home.
Yes.
I think they can take UNLV, even though that's a road game.
Yes.
And I've actually got both New Mexico States highlighted as wins. But I still got them right on the line, 5 to 6 wins. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go 5 wins.
Yes.
I don't think they're going to quite get to that number. So I'm going to take the under.
Yeah, I think we're both sitting on the same place here. I went push because I do think this is a good team, but their schedule's just, it's not in their favor this year. Definitely not. I assume we aren't anywhere near the 11-1 to win the conference.
No.
With this schedule, I just don't see them winning that conference at all. All right, we're going to move on to one of my teams that I think will be a challenge here in the Mountain West. San Diego State at 6.5 wins. We know they're probably going to be the best defensive team in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
They will be able to run the ball.
Yeah.
There is one question, and it's been the question for San Diego State, I think, for about 6 years now. What kind of quarterback play are they going to get?
Well, they bring in Ole Miss transfer Jalen Maiden. I don't know if he's going to be getting the start or not, but I think he fits Brady Hoke's dual threat quarterback that he's looking for. One thing I really like, you said their running game. They get running back Greg Bell. Before he got hurt with an ankle injury last year, his first 4 games of the season, he had 4 100-plus yard games. So I look for him to perform well. I actually like this team. I think they're going to be pretty solid this year.
Yeah, I went over on them. I thought their win total was really, really low, especially you mentioned about Hawaii's schedule being so tough. I thought their schedule was pretty favorable to them.
I don't watch out for Townsend.
Yeah, watch out for Townsend. That one I can probably guarantee Townsend coming all the way across the country to play San Diego State. They're probably all right. You mentioned quarterbacks. Lucas Johnson's the other one who will be, battling for that position.
When knowing Brady Hoke, he may utilize both.
And they're actually both very similar quarterbacks. Whichever one seems to be capable of throwing the ball somewhat forward probably is the one playing that day. That really is my only question on these guys. If they can get any just base level line, adequate college quarterback play, I think they will be a really, really beast of a team. I think defensively they can shut teams down. And, New Mexico State, that at Arizona game, I think they're probably talent-wise better than Arizona. We'll get to them. The Utah game, Utah does come there. I don't know if points will be scored in that game. I'm very curious to see what that under is going to be. You mentioned Townsend. Then they go through, New Mexico. The at San Jose State game will be tough. But, Air Force, Fresno State, Hawaii, Nevada, UNLV, Boise State. But Boise State comes there at the end of the year. So, they are poised to make a run. I had them down at 8 wins. I just thought 6.5 was really, really low. And I was being soft on the 8 wins.
Yeah.
I was giving them losses to pretty much any of those top teams on there. And
I was going to say I've got them at 7, but the potential for more than that is really good. I love that juice at plus 100. I think that's good value there. I think that's a no-brainer because like you said, those first 5 games, I think they come out of the gates 5-0.
Yeah.
Pretty likely that's going to happen. Then you just got to get 2 more to get the over out of the last.
Yeah, I was very
7.
shocked at the number, and
I think that's definitely going to happen. You're going to double your money. I think for sure.
I love this win total. This is probably my favorite win total on the board, and even a little bit on that 14-1. I think if they can beat Nevada coming to them, that puts them in position to try to get in that championship game. And then, if you really need to, you can just take the other side and find yourself a win-win situation there. So I thought 14-1 sort of piqued my interest conference-wise with them because, they're adequate quarterback away from really sort of contending in this division. Now, can they get that? They didn't last year, but the previous year they had gotten adequate quarterback play, which has kept them, around 10, 11 wins in previous years. So interesting on San Diego State. And we'll go to your team that you really, really like.
I love this team.
Fresno State at 6 wins. You aren't going to like it. I went under here, but what do you like about Fresno State?
I love this offense. Quarterback Jake Hayner and running back Ronnie Rivers, along with wide receiver Jalen Cooper. I just think this offense is amazing. They averaged 479 yards per game last year and 32.8 points per game. Unfortunately, they also allowed 420 yards per game and 30 points per game defensively.
Well, that was going to be my counter to you. I do, once again, think this offense will be very, very good, possibly the best one in the Mountain West. But this defense might be bordering on the UNLV New Mexico level. And that just puts you in a very, very dangerous position.
Well, what I want to say is, as much as I love this team and I want them to have success, I'm going to be rooting for this team. This schedule is brutal.
Well, and then part 2 of that, they have some very difficult games.
At Oregon.
And all their
UCLA.
road games also in the
At
conference
Hawaii,
seem
at
to
Wyoming.
be very, very difficult. They have, you mentioned at UCLA, at Hawaii, at Wyoming, at San Diego State.
At San Jose State.
Yes. And Boise State does come to them, but they never beat Boise State.
I may like this team in some against the spread picks individually throughout the year.
Yes.
But I don't think I've actually got them at most getting a push here.
Yeah.
6 wins. That's what I've got them at 6. So I'm gonna take the push.
I tried to work my way into getting that over, but I was just like, I don't think they can sort of step up and play with those like a UCLA.
Maybe get some good over bets.
Yes, I think they can score points on UCLA, but I'm very scared that points are coming right back on them.
Yep.
And I think the other teams they play will find ways to sort of not shut them down, but get stops out of them, get turnovers out of them. I don't know if they can get stops and turnovers out of the other side when they step up and play those top teams. And the problem is, other than like New Mexico, they're basically playing every other top team in this conference. So, it's just very, very difficult to see Fresno State going much over that 6. And I would have a very, very hard time betting it. 25-1 to win the conference.
No,
it's a lot, but it's just very, very difficult.
I'm going to have fun
schedule.
watching them this year, though.
Yes, I will say entertainment factor right there. All right, we're going to move on to Air Force. They sit at 6.5 wins. Basically, you know what Air Force is. They come, they play hard, they run that triple option. It is not fun to play. It is difficult to go there and play. They play at altitude, and they pretty much chop block you all game long. They will have sort of some defensive, inefficiencies due to their, size requirements that they don't allow players to be over certain sizes. But I think a solid team. 6.5 was a little much for me. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, Troy Calhoun's 15th year at Air Force. So one thing I look at is offensive line, which I think is key to their offense. They lost all 5 starters this past year, and they've got Boise and Nevada on the road. I don't think they're going to get wins there. But I look at the rest of their schedule, and I think they get Navy early. They moved that up for the September 11th anniversary, so they get Navy early. Lafayette's very winnable. FAU, that's a big, interesting game. But
I think that was their swing.
I think that's going to be the difference in them going on the over or the under here. But I'm going to take the over. I like 7 wins for Air Force.
See, I went under at 6 wins. You could talk me into 7. The problem was I don't think you could talk me into 8. I saw where they could get 7. I don't see where they can get 8. And I think it's more likely they hit that 6. I do think this is a very good team. They have been pretty much the same team for, I don't know, Troy Calhoun's all 15 years there. They do have playmakers. They will, you don't think of an option offense as an explosive offense, but they will hit explosive plays on you, especially at running back. They
kind of lull you to sleep, and then all of a sudden they blow something up.
You hit 3-3-3, and then one of their running backs just hits a big play, and you're like, what? And it's just, other than, that their conference schedule is very, very difficult. and I think those other, military games, Army, Navy, will probably help determine. I did, when I first glanced at it, saw Lafayette. I thought we were talking about Lafayette, but then it's patriotically Lafayette. So a loss went to a win on that one, I will say.
Yeah, I think they're actually the best military academy school this year. So I don't think they're going to have any issues with Army or Navy. So I've got them both marked as wins. I think that's why I'm up at their.
I think that's why you're on 7. I think I split them because those teams know each other so well. I just assume one wins one, the other wins one, the other wins one, and we sort of go home. But, Wyoming, Boise State, San Diego State, at Colorado State, at Nevada, all on their schedule. That makes it really difficult. I don't think I gave them any of those wins. Maybe Colorado State, but I just didn't see. That's just really, really hard to win those sort of road games on there. So I had them slide under, you had them slide over.
Mhm.
I think we're both in and around 6-7 wins for this team. We'll move on to Colorado State. Interesting team here, 4.5 wins. I don't know what I see here. I think quarterback, very, very dicey position. I do think they have some decent skill position guys. I do think they have some decent skill position guys on defense as well, but they just make me a little nervous. And I think they just probably don't equate to enough wins. So I had them going on the under here. I see a lot of losses on this schedule.
Yeah, I another defense that I really like.
Yeah.
I think their defensive line could be playing at the Power 5 level. All 5 starters on that line are returning. Secondary, they've got questions. You said offense. What are they going to be? It's kind of hard to pin down what this team's going to be at. I've got them going slightly over.
I've
got the 5 wins. I think they can get to that 5.
Yeah, I only have them with 2 wins on here. Now, if they get good quarterback play, that can probably jump. But since I have no idea who their quarterback is going to be, I don't think they know who their quarterback is going to be. That makes me a little nervous. And, they have a very difficult schedule. South Dakota State, you look at it, you think win, but they were in the championship game last year in the subdivision. I don't look at that as, a easy win. And South Dakota State has numerous times come in and beaten Division I teams. So that's a tough one. You bring Vandy in, maybe a win, but that's an SEC school coming there. At Toledo, I had a loss at Iowa. So, theoretically, you're looking at a possible 0-4 start to the season. And that just puts things in a bad place. I do like the Boston College coach and the old Boston College coach in here. I do think Steve Adazio is a solid coach. I just, quarterback play makes me very, very nervous in this one. And I just don't see a ton of wins, on this schedule, but I do think they have players. You mentioned they have some solid defenders players, but I don't think it's a great unit.
No, they give up a lot of points, a lot of yards.
They have solid offensive players, but I don't think it's a great overall unit.
Correct.
It's like pieces here and there, but they can't seem to gel into one team that I think can get a lot of wins. But I guess the option is there. If they get good quarterback play, they might be able to hit your number. But I just, somebody has to get some losses in the Mountain West. They were when I marked down to get some losses in the Mountain West.
I'm coming up on some.
Yeah, well, the next 3, definitely for sure. All right, Utah State at 3.5 win. Not a lot of talent on this team. New coach coming in. I like the coach that's coming in there, but I don't know if they have enough talent on this roster quite yet. But I thought 3.5 wins was a little low because they have a pretty soft schedule. I went right at 4. I'm curious where you sit.
I look at this roster and you know what stands out to me on this roster? Nothing.
Yes.
They're very average to mediocre across the board. No standout players really at any position. And for that reason, I've got them going at most 3 wins. I like more in between that 2 to 3 wins. So I'm taking the under. You're getting plus 105 there. I think I'm going to take that number.
Yeah, I went a little over. Logan Boner came over with Blake Anderson from Arkansas State to sort of stabilize the quarterback position. I mean, I don't think he's a world beater, but compared to what they had last year, which last year was a complete disastrous season. So I throw that out a little bit. This has been a program that has been a pretty solid program throughout the years. So I don't see a ton of talent there right now, but we're going to get to the other two bottom teams. And, I think Blake can maybe, of the ones we're talking about now, Colorado State, Utah State, the next two we're going to talk about, I think maybe this might be the team that maybe is the, I don't want to see great one, but the best of the really, really worst there. But I had them right at 4, underwhelming, and we'll lose a lot of games to the upper tier teams of the Mountain West. All right. We'll go to the next one. New Mexico, 4.5 wins. I thought this was way too many wins. I don't see anything on here. We mentioned Fresno State's defense being bad. New Mexico's defense is somehow even more atrocious.
Well, hopefully this team actually gets to play their home games in New Mexico this year. But they got a probably good for them quarterback transfer and Terry Wilson from Kentucky.
Wow, I was going to make fun of that, but he can run the ball. I still don't know if he can throw a pass over 2 yards.
And they had an interesting year last year. They took a tough loss to Hawaii by 6 and Nevada by 7, but then they upset Wyoming and Fresno to end the year. So they've shown they can do it. I'm still taking the under here, but I think they're going to be just under at 4 wins.
Well, I will say they do have something they do well, whereas like Utah State, you don't have anything that they do. They do run the ball well. Mm-hmm. And Terry Wilson, you mentioned, will be able to run the ball. The quarterback that was there last year also returns. He got hurt, I believe, midway through the year. He's also a runner. He's not much of a thrower either. So I assume Terry Wilson's going to take that job, but I'd call his career at Kentucky uneventful and benefiting of very, very skilled defenses. But anyway, they do run the ball very well. The problem with that is if you run the ball really well, you sort of want a solid defense on the other side. And I just think these guys get ripped to shreds on defense, especially with some of these teams in the Mountain West that can just carve you up.
I think they give up like 450 yards per game and 32 points.
And that's my problem. You're running the ball so much. I don't know if you can keep up scoring wise because they run the ball well, but they aren't like explosive runs. It's more 5-6 yard runs, march you down the field. It's not hit you with, a 40-yard run here. It's just sort of grind you to death. There's a lot of sort of Bobby Davies mentality still hovering around this team, which isn't a bad mentality, but just don't think there's enough talent on this roster to hit that number. I have them under and going on the 3 here. So
we both have the under.
Yes, we both have the under here. You like them 1 win more than I do, though. All right, we'll move on to UNLV. 1.5 wins. I don't ever take unders on 1.5 wins.
I am here.
Tate Martell returns to his homeland. He's bombed out at both Ohio State and Miami, where they tried to turn him into a receiver because he was such a bad quarterback. But he was once a huge prospect coming out of Nevada. Does he bring Nevada anything?
They've got a decent running back group. That's about all I can find on this UNLV team. I think they're pretty terrible. 0-6 last year. Now that was a conference-only schedule.
Yes.
But, I see that Eastern Washington game. I've got that as a win. What else do you have as a win?
Well,
Point to one game on that schedule that is a win.
Well, I marked 4 games down that they could possibly win. Not win, possibly win. Eastern Washington was one of them, but that will not be an easy game because that's a very good subdivision team there. UT San Antonio, you mentioned, at UT San Antonio, tough game, but they could possibly win it if Tate Martell is actually a solid quarterback. The Hawaii game at UNLV, and then I marked New Mexico down. So that was 4 possible wins. at 1.5, I figure you could split the difference and get to 2 there.
I think they may get 1 win.
Yeah. But
They're not getting 2.
this team is not very good on defense. We mentioned quarterback play, maybe improving. We don't know. We'll see if Tate can do anything. I don't think they've technically announced him as a starter yet either. So we'll see how that goes. But 1.5 wins. I'm on the over, but that's because I assume teams will win more than 1 game on the year. I'm not overwhelmed by their talent or play style. You're at the under here. I think they are the official whipping boy of the Mountain West Conference. Any love on the 25-1?
No.
I don't think there's any way that's enough value. All right. We'll move on to bigger and better things. Well,
Yep.
maybe
Well,
so. I think the Mountain West
know.
probably been a better conference than the Pac12 the last handful of years.
Pac-12 just had such a weird year last
Yes.
year. I thought that they really I think they had poor leadership in the conference with the dealing with COVID, and it just led to confusion and disarray. So, but there's actually a lot of teams I like in the Pac-12.
Well,
this year.
yeah,
I was surprised once I started
I was
digging
going
into
to
it.
bring that up a little bit before we got into the teams. How much are you factoring last year's Pac-12 into this year's Pac-12?
Really not a whole lot. I'm kind of looking back to 2019. I think there's a little bit last year you can look at, but I mean, they didn't even Oregon won by default, didn't
Yes.
they? Because
I
Washington
think they-
wasn't able to.
Yeah, they were, I believe, like 2-3
Well, there
going
was-
into the championship game. Now, they did win the championship game and then won whatever bowl game they played in. I
Yeah.
think it was the Rose Bowl, but I don't totally remember. Last year's a bit of a blur. But speaking of Oregon, we'll start right there with the Oregon Ducks at 9 wins. Really, this is just a Mario crystal ball team.
Yeah.
Solid on offensive line, defensive
Yeah.
line. Will be a defensive smash mouth team. Quarterback play, Anthony Brown from Boston College. I'm not in love with him, but
Well, this
he
offense
could probably man the ship.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This is really it's very reminiscent of what Chip Kelly had running at this Oregon team. It's very system offense. You just put the pieces in place and execute. They've got decent running backs, but you're probably going to get production out of any running back you put in this Oregon offense. But I like this team. I think they're the favorites, and I think they should be for a reason. Tough road schedule this year. They got to go to Washington. They got to go to Ohio State non-conference, at Stanford, and but I like this team. I think they're going to go over. I like 10 wins for this.
Yeah. See, I went under. You mentioned the schedule. That's what made me a little nervous. That's not to say I don't think they can win the Pac-12, but you mentioned non-conference at Ohio State. That's probably a loss. That'll be, if Oregon wants to put themselves in the picture,
Yep.
They have to win that game, because then that gives them the benefit of, say, going to Washington, losing that game, and you can still say, well, they beat Ohio State at Ohio State. Losing at Washington, not that big a deal, or losing at Utah. I think that's where I got scared. At Ohio State, at Stanford, still not an easy place to play. At UCLA, at Washington, at Utah. That's legit. We're going to talk about it, probably all the teams we think are going to contend in the Pac-12, and they're going to those teams. So it is a really good team. They will be a solid football team that can defend, run the ball. But I'm just under on them because I think their schedule really, really hurts them. They did finish last year strong, but they did struggle early.
Well, and they got Cal's defensive coordinator they brought in, Dreiter, and maybe they can make some improvements on that defense, and that can make a big change on this team, I think, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. So 250. No one's a favorite. I don't love the 250.
No.
Now, the only thing I will say in this Northern Division, there are probably 2 teams that are sort of contending to get into that championship spot. You we'll have, one of those two teams essentially between Oregon and Washington. Maybe a couple of those northern teams can fringe contend, but I don't see much in this northern division other than Oregon and Washington who can take that spot. So maybe there's a little value there, but then you're in the championship game. And I think the South, there are probably 4 teams who we think can contend in the
Definitely.
South, all who match up just as well as with Oregon. So will be an interesting season with Oregon. That you mentioned Fresno State to start and then at Ohio State. I think we'll know probably where we sit with Oregon pretty early in the season here. And then we'll mention the next contender, Washington, 9 wins on the year. It was Jimmy Lake's first year there taking over for Chris Peterson.
Well, they went, 3-1 last year?
Yeah, they did go 3-1, and they had to miss because they were COVIDed numerous times, I believe. I did think I saw a little bit of drop off for them last year. It was not totally noticeable, but it'll be interesting if Lake can continue what Peterson created there, basically winning 10 games a season, since his second year at Washington. I think their schedule is much more beneficial this year. So I have them going over, and they don't play quite the vigorous road schedule that Oregon did. And I think their talent's a little similar, probably not quite as good on offense as Oregon, but I think the defense will be, once again, one of the best in the Pac-12.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think this team's getting a lot of hype. I'm not as big of a fan of this team as a lot of people are. I still think with that schedule, I've got them getting to the 9 wins. But I'm really going to look at seeing how many points teams going up against them are. I'm interested to see how much Michigan's going to get in the big house in that second week of the season. I think you could get some good value there in taking teams playing against Washington just because people are so big on them. But the back half of that schedule is kind of rough. We'll see what happens. They got the Oregon, Arizona State, Colorado, all back to back.
And then the rivalry with Washington State, the Apple Cup. So you can't ever take that one totally for granted.
But even then, the overs they can lose 3 there and at least get the push.
I think that's where I was. They got 3 losses on there. Their road games are at Oregon State, at Arizona, at Stanford, at Colorado. I mean, if you're asking for compare their roads to Oregon's road. This is a much easier path. Even the non-conference Big Ten. One is at Ohio State. The other is at Michigan. I think there is a much higher chance that Washington can go into Michigan and win that game versus Oregon going into Ohio State and winning that game.
I just don't think I think the schedule plays out better for Washington, but if you had to put these teams up against each other, which we will see in November, Washington versus Oregon, I think Oregon's the better team for sure.
Yeah, well, that'll be a good matchup. Week 2 should be interesting. Washington, Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State. So we'll see which conference sort of comes out ahead. I don't know if either of us are going to end up putting Michigan as one of our top teams in the Big Ten, but I'm sure they will get enough hype. If they win their first game of the season, we'll be hearing Jim Harbaugh national championship hopes.
Nice.
But I will say the 350 conference odds here piqued my interest a little more than Oregon.
Well, considering their only
schedule-wise,
division,
their only competition really is Oregon. So you're getting them at 350 essentially in that championship game, and matched up versus any of the teams you think in the South: USC, Arizona State, Utah, UCLA. I think that's good value because it'll probably be in and around a 3-point spread game when they match up, sort of depending on how the season breaks out. So I saw a little value there at the 350, especially with the way the schedule breaks out. We'll see if the offense can really sort of hang in there and keep this defense to where they're the dominant team. But we'll move on next to USC. Easily the most talent probably in the Pac-12. What they do with the talent and how they play on the field always becomes a little bit interesting. So what do you make of USC and the 8.5 wins here?
I actually like this team pretty good. I think I think this year's they're gonna pull it together. Let me get that out there. But I've got them going 9 wins. I actually like the over here getting the plus 105. I think their offense is clicking. and they got to get their defense playing better, but I think it's going to get there. They've got good front line and linebackers. They tend to give up the big play a lot. So if their secondary can step up, I think they could be right there, especially in their division.
Yeah. You just never know with this team. The 5-1 record, but I don't know if anybody remembers the Arizona State game where they were basically up 30 points until 5 minutes left in the game.
And barely beat.
And Arizona State somehow managed to lose that one. And then the next week
UCLA, they barely got by.
They barely got by.
Touchdown.
And then in the Pac12 championship game, they got murdered by Oregon, who basically was just handed the spot into the title game because nobody else was healthy enough to be there. So, and I think that's my main problem with this team. I don't know if they're coached well. They certainly aren't disciplined or have not shown discipline ever since Clay Helton has taken over there. And my problem is I'm going under because I don't trust this team. I mentioned the San Jose State game. I don't think either of us be stunned if they melted down and lost that game, or stunned if they won 65-3. It's just, when this team's talent is clicking and flowing and they're playing good football, they can play with those top teams and probably a national title contender. But they just have not ever put that together, and they will lose stupid games. The one that stuck out to me, maybe they start 2-0, San Jose State, Stanford, we're all going hurrah, and then they go up to Washington State, blow that game, which, isn't stunning. And it just, I can't see the team putting together that kind of season. I think there are better teams also in the South. Maybe not talent-wise, but coaching-wise, discipline-wise. I just think there are better teams out there. But if they do come together, play well, this is probably the most talented team in the Pac-12.
I think I'd definitely a little bigger on the Trojans than you are. But I think 9's the number.
It'd help also if they try to run the ball on occasion instead of playing the air raid offense. They are USC, for God's sakes. They don't need to gimmick their offense too much. They have top recruits at every position. Run the ball on occasion. We don't need to throw 60 times a game. But so I went under on USC. I just think this is probably it for Clay Helton. I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Time to move on. 7 years.
Went barely under 8 wins. So, I saw it right there. But I think if he can't win 10 games, at least have them in talks for the playoff. Not necessarily in the playoffs, but have them at least up there.
And
I think it's probably they get rid of him.
Well, then you've mentioned it. In this division, as tough as it is, they're going to have to get those probably 9 to 10 wins to even get to the championship this year.
Yes, I think that's definitely so. All right, we'll mention another team that's undisciplined and plays wonky in Arizona State. 9 wins on their schedule. I went a little under on this one, but I think their talent is really elite too. But also they seem to play games where they are close with teams they should not be close to, or they are mentioning like melting down at the end of USC game. I think they did that 3 times last year. So what do you make of this Arizona State team?
You play to win the game.
Well, I don't think they always do.
Herm Edwards' team here. I think this is a really solid team here. They're managing to skate by some controversial stuff without, I don't think, any punishments or anything are going to come of it, at least not right away. Maybe we'll see a postseason ban. I don't know.
I doubt that.
But anyway, I think this team's really talented across the board. But I think the schedule is, again, rough. Just that division's tough. And I like USC.
Yes.
And so I think I've got USC as slightly better than Arizona State. I've got them on the under, actually. Yes. I've got 8 wins for Arizona State.
Yeah. I'm on the under. I had down to 7 wins. That at BYU looks a little difficult to me. You mentioned at UCLA, at Utah, at Washington, and then towards the end of the year at Oregon State. And Southern teams going north tend to have a little bit of a problem, much like teams from the north going south have a little bit of a problem. This is probably the biggest differential conference-wise, like weather-wise, to where you are. Like all those Southern teams are all 70, 80 degree warm weather throughout the year. Then you move up to the northern team and it's all 40, rainy, cold, windy. It's just a huge differential. So when those teams go up there for weekend play. Arizona State will literally be playing in 75-degree weather all week, and then they move up and go up to an Oregon State or a Washington where it's probably 35 degrees and pouring rain, and I think that just throws teams off. And it's the same reverse coming down. I think that's actually hurt the conference a little bit because it's such a differential. I mean, you look at the Big Ten teams where everybody's weather is sort of the same with the ACC and the SEC, where like weather teams, it might be 50, 60 here and 70 in Florida, but there's not that much of a variance, where there's probably a 30 to 40 degree variance with rain and wind here. And I think that hurts both sides of the scale, north coming south, south going north. And I think Arizona State might be hurt a little bit with that. Plus their really, really difficult road schedule. I will say their defense has some ridiculous playmakers on it.
Yeah, all starters back.
They should be able to shut teams down. I say that, and sometimes they wouldn't shut teams down last year, and it's most of the same guys. Offensively, I think I have more questions.
We got a very small sample size
Yes.
of this team last year, just 4 games played. So I'm looking forward to getting the full season.
But they should have been 4-0, and they were 2-2, and that's my probably biggest concern. More so on the offensive side. I just see inconsistency there on the offensive side. I don't know how much I trust Herm Edwards either. He's a fun soundbite. I don't know how good of a overall football coach he is, though. So I'm a little bit down on Arizona State. I mean, you sort of have to be. There have to be teams you like, teams you don't like.
Yep.
There are 4, I think, contenders in this side of the thing. So you have to be a little down on a couple, little up on the couple, and make your decision. I'm a little down on Arizona State. Now,
I'm big on.
Now to who I'm big on, Utah. 8.5. That's a big, big number in this side of the conference here in the South. But I went over with it, 9 wins. This defensive unit, as always, will be elite. Probably I go the best in the Pac-12. The question, quarterback play. Can they get it?
Well, I love this Utah team. That quarterback transfer out of Baylor, I think that's going to be huge for this team, his performance. And I love this Utah team. I think they're going to sail over that 8.5 easy. I've got them going 10 wins.
Yes. I had them at 9 wins, but I think they can win 10 games.
Yeah.
Defensively, I think they can just maul teams if they can get solid quarterback play. They don't need like great quarterback play. They just need to be able to run the ball, hit those play action option throws to hit a handful of explosive plays. And if you give this defense a lead, they're going to shut you down.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing I had a little concern about is, at BYU, at San Diego State, at USC, sort of to start the season. That's a little bit tricky. A lot of road games there. And I just, if this team gets a little bit down on themselves, the quarterback play might not be up to par, then does the defense continue to work hard and get wins? They always have under Kyle Whittingham. He's probably been the most consistent coach in the Pac-12. I don't even know how long he's been there. It feels like forever since he took over for Urban Meyer. That's how long he's been there since Urban Meyer left, who's been at about 4 different jobs since then. So I just love this Utah team, and I love their consistency. I trust their consistency more than, say, a USC or an Arizona State's talent level that might be a little bit greater.
I just think Charlie Brewer's going to be the difference maker. 15 of 15 in their spring game. Yes, I know it's a spring game, but that consistent on offense with their defense, they can really do some big stuff.
Yeah. All right. I wanted to mention Utah's odds. They were at 12-1. I thought that was pretty decent value.
I think that's solid.
I think if you went like a 350 Washington, 12-1 Utah, that's great value to have, and you could have both sides of that championship game.
This is my favorite team in the South, and so if we're getting those odds for the South team, that's pretty good value.
Yeah,
I think
definitely so. All right, we'll move to probably the last contender, I think, out of the South, UCLA. Their schedule is very difficult. Probably the most difficult in the Pac-12.
I think there's one other team that could compete with them on schedule.
I really think this comes down to DTR's play. They need good quarterback play. He's been very hot and cold. They got a pretty decent freshman behind him.
Mhm.
I'm just curious how long Chip Kelly waits. He's now in his third year. If he continues with his inconsistent play, his sort of turnover prone play, how quick does Kelly pull that trigger? And how long is Kelly's leash to maybe negotiate this schedule? Because I think that they might be a really good team who wins 6 wins. I gave them 8 wins, but I was being very, very kind.
I really wanted to give this UCLA team more wins, but I just look at this schedule and it's awful. I really think it's a prove it or lose it year for Chip Kelly. I think, you get a pass last year, and he's plenty of time to get his offense and his players in there now. So I think they need to do something this year. And I think they had a run last year where they had 4 games against the spread that they managed to win. But that heartbreaking loss against USC really turned their season around.
Well, I mean that they started out the year in that Colorado State game where they turned the ball over 5 straight times, got down like 30-0, then came all the way back and they turned the ball over on like the last possession. I mean, that's what we're talking about. I think this UCLA team can play with any of these top teams, but they just have wild, inconsistent swings at the quarterback position that can really, really hurt them. And it seems like when that position is going bad, then the defense gets a little down and Chip Kelly sort of tightens up the offense to try not to force things with the issue. That's why I'm just curious if Robinson does not progress and he looks the same as he has since his freshman year. How quick do we pull that trigger? And what do they look like? I don't know if you should fire him if they win 6 games, because I think they could be a good team, win 6 games with this schedule. I think that's a good season.
Well, I mean, you got non-conference LSU.
Yes.
That's tough. Then, look at the last 5 games of the season: Oregon, at Utah, Colorado, at USC, Cal.
Yes.
Those are all potential losses in my opinion.
Yes.
Now, are they talented enough to win those? Maybe, if they don't, screw up.
Yes.
I think they're a really solid team. I'm going to really like this team against the spread. I hope they get a lot of points because I will probably take them. But I don't know if they're going to make it through and get the over on here. I've got them 6 wins.
Yes.
At the most. I think that's where they're at. Kelly may get 1 more year out of this. With as weird as the year last year was and everything's finally starting to get back to normal, we'll see what he can do, but this isn't the year.
Yeah. And you mentioned their easy win games are Hawaii and Fresno State, which probably are wins, but those aren't easy teams to play.
No.
It's not Lafayette on your schedule where you just pencil in an easy win. Yes. If you play bad, those 2 teams will beat you.
Yep.
So you don't have like a huge margin for error. You can't play awful and win those games. So just a brutal schedule. And you mentioned that end. It's just going to be tough. But, if they can get through there and win early, maybe they start to roll. And then that back end, they can find a way to navigate through. I don't know if I'd go with UCLA here on the, 40-1, but it does start to tweak my interest because if they get rolling, I think
the talent is there, but they've just got to piece it all together and put all the puzzle pieces together. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. So you noticed we went 2 good teams of the North up top, then a big run of all the Southern teams, and now we're going to get into the sort of weird middle of the northern of the Pac-12. I think we are left confused with these next couple of teams.
We get into a cluster here where either one of these teams could come out on top of the pile here. So I'm interested to see how you've got them. I've kind of got them all very similar, these next 4.
Yes.
And then 1 team right at the bottom.
I'm very curious to go back and check my math on how I equated each team's win, because it's possible I gave each team wins versus each other. But we'll start out with Washington State. 6 wins.
That's high.
I don't know if there's enough talent on this team to really contend. They're one of the ones I probably gave more losses to on this side of things. I think there are a lot of questions at quarterback, no matter who is playing the quarterback position.
I don't think they figured it out yet.
And I just don't see this team really being a threat, but they did manage to win games out of there. I do like Rolovich as their coach out of Hawaii. So there are things I like about them, but there are probably more negatives than positives.
Well, Rolovich is going to get points. This offense
Yes.
is going to move the ball, but they have no defense at all. And you know, that offense and their home field advantage may get them some wins, but I don't see them getting over that 6. I've got them at 4 wins.
Yes, I think that would be the Washington State. While Leach was there, they did build up that offense, but their defense actually turned out to be pretty solid units. That's why they were sort of contending in that Pac-12 North for a stretch. And I think that defensive talent has dropped off, there. So they can't hang there. Offensively, I do think they have a handful of skill position guys that are really, really good, but I don't know who's distributing them the ball. And I don't think anyone who's back there can distribute them the ball. So it just looks like they will struggle to get wins. I will say they do play a pretty easy non-conference schedule. So there are wins there, but I think that's all I gave them. I think once they sort of gotten to the Pac-12, I started chalking up a whole lot of losses there.
Definitely.
I went under in 4.
That's exactly what I've got them at.
So we're on the same wavelength there.
Yep.
The one I went over on, Stanford, they are at 4 wins. I had them at 6 wins. Defense is not where it used to be. I think the line's better than it had been in the couple of years past. Quarterback position, I wouldn't say is great, but they look to be able to run the ball like they used to, and maybe they can control games a little bit. I'm curious where your thoughts on Stanford are.
I've got them at 5 wins over 120, but we talked about this. We're talking about Stanford over under season win totals, 4.5. David Shaw has this team is really kind of fallen apart underneath him. And I think if they don't get over this win total, it could finally be it for him.
Well, I think he hadn't lost. I think he had 8 straight wins since he started there. And then, he went 4-8. I think it was 2 years ago. Now they bounced back theoretically last year, going 4-2, but I didn't think they were a very good team last year. I thought it was, think they found ways to win games. But that being said, I think that's probably why I put them to 6th.
They got to find their defense again. They lost their defense.
They can find ways to probably win 6 games. Really, the swing of this is the Kansas State and the at Vanderbilt game. If they could probably sneak those 2, I think they could probably find 4 wins throughout the conference, sort of playing the bottom level of the Pac-12. So I think those 2 are really, really key. And if their defense, I don't think it'll be good. But if it can be adequate, I think
anything could be better than last year.
Yes, that's correct. So really, really interested on the Stanford front. We both have them going over. I'm at 6, you're at 5. So we think they'll be a little better. Next one, probably even weirder. Cal, that's 6 wins. I really have no clue what to make of this team. I don't even know what to consider last year. I sort of marked it off. Wilcox had, sort of gained wins each of those years, and then last year they were just terrible. He does seem to bring a good defensive there. My questions are on offense with Cal. Where do you see Cal going?
Well, this is another team like UCLA. I want to give them more wins. I like this team, but I just can't find them on this schedule. And, we talked, they lost their defensive coordinator to Oregon. Now, this is Justin Wilcox's defense, so I don't think that's a very big loss. But, opening that game against Nevada, I think that could – I like that Nevada team. I think that could be a loss. And then having to go on the road at TCU, you get an easy one at home against Sacramento State, but then you're going back to Washington.
Any rivalry between Sacramento State and California?
I don't even know what the mascot for Sacramento State is.
Well, I think it's a hornet or something. I recall from my basketball days of looking them up.
But it's very potential that they could start this season 1-3.
Yes.
I don't know how much you recover from there. They're going to have to get some offensive production. The defense is going to be there. But it's like you said, who's going to be playing quarterback? It's funny, you know. It seems like it was just the other day that we had high-powered Sonny Dykes offenses in Cal, and now we're talking about high-powered defenses with no offense.
Yes.
So it's quite the polar opposite. But I wanted to give this team more wins, but this schedule just doesn't allow it.
Well, I think that's been the thing with Justin Wilcox. He hasn't been able to truly find an offensive identity his whole time at Cal. Now they found ways to win games.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's very, very smart on the defensive side of things. I think he's really smart in-game coach. He finds ways to find points. But you mentioned it, Nevada at TCU. You mentioned the easy Sacramento State game, but then it's at Washington State at Oregon. Like they can be 1-5, and then where are you going there?
Yeah.
You start, your heads get down. Now, if they can get, to a winning point out of that sort of schedule, that closing schedule is a little bit easier, and they might be able to close. But I just couldn't find enough wins here. I went with 4 wins for Cal.
I've got them at 5. I wanted to give them some. They're definitely going under.
Yes, I just couldn't find enough wins here.
No, they're not going to hit that.
And
6.
I just don't know if there's enough offense on this side of things. Now, they might play some very gross games and keep themselves in plenty of these games because they tend to do that. But I just couldn't find enough wins here. All right, we're going to move to Colorado. A little bit of a surprise last year. 4.5 is their over-under. I'm under on them, but I will admit I have a very much bias on Carl Durrell. I can't stand him, and UCLA is in the mess they are in because of that.
Well, as you know, I actually fell in love with this team last year,
Yes.
and they let me down many times. I was very big on this team, but I don't think they. What was it? All the teams they played last year, nobody had a winning record or something like that. Their schedule was really weird last year, the way it fell. But I don't see a lot of standouts on this team. I've got them going under 4 wins. Well, 4 is what I have. This is the number I have them at.
Yes.
But I just don't see them getting that 5. I mean, Northern Colorado wins.
Yes.
Minnesota, maybe.
Yes.
And then the only other win I see on the schedule is Arizona at home.
Yes.
Everything else is a likely loss, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So,
that was the thing. I just didn't see a ton.
some that could go either way, but there's not any that they're highly favored in.
The only thing you can say is they do have a little bit of a home field advantage playing in altitude.
Yep.
So maybe they sneak 1 or 2, teams come in there ill prepared. But I just don't like this team. They didn't have it named their quarterback yet. It's either going to be a pocket passer or a runner, which confuses me because you have one quarterback who can't throw and one quarterback who can only stay in the pocket and throw. That just seems like your offense needs an identity, and you don't know your identity on offense yet. They did play good defense last year. A handful of those guys are back. They should be solid on defense, but honestly, I just don't trust Carl Durrell at all. So I think this team just sort of freakishly sort of went 4-2 last year, and I'm way under on them. I'm on 3 wins on them, and I think that was being nice. So other than the Northern Colorado win to start the season, I don't know if that's a rivalry or not either.
I've got one better than you, 4 wins.
All right. So I think we're both a little down on the Buffaloes this year, but next up, we're going to go to a team I like. And
There's nothing to like about this team.
I like Jonathan Smith, and that's why I like this team. So Oregon State at 4.5 wins. I went over and gave them 7 wins. I think they're going to be
7.
I think they're going to be the Cinderella team of the Pac-12. I think they will be the ones that finish on top of the middle of the pack of the Pac-12 here, just under Washington and Oregon.
I think they've got a good home field. I don't know. 7 wins.
I'm going to say their defense will probably be poor, like it has been. I think it might make a little bit of a leap, but I think their offense is going to.
Well, they lost one of their best running backs in the history of the school as well.
Yes, but they replaced those guys. I think their offense will continue to improve. I knock out last year when they went 5-7 in 2019, and everybody was like, "Oh, this team's fun." Now they were playing a bunch of 60 to 50 games. They did not defend at all, and yes, Jake Luton was their quarterback, who is a NFL level quarterback. They don't quite have that, but I just love Jonathan Smith. I think this team can score enough points and sort of pick on this middle of the pack here in the North and find their way to wins. But really, the two at the start of the year are key. They have to beat Purdue. They have to beat Hawaii to get to that 7 number. If they lose those games, they aren't touching that number. But I'm believing in this Oregon State team, and I'm believing in Jonathan Smith. I just really like his offensive schemes. So we'll see if we can get this offense rolling back to what it was in 2019.
I've got 4 wins here.
You got 4 wins.
4.
So
I think they get Hawaii. I think they get Idaho. I think they maybe get Washington State, and then one other somewhere.
Yeah. I'm bullish just because I really like Jonathan Smith. So I don't know if they can actually get to 7 wins. I do think the offense will be really, really good again, like it was back in 2019. So that's where I'm giving them the bump. I like their home field advantage, and I like their unis. So
they got just like the orange and black.
Yes, I know. They got the sights going for them. So I think this team will be good, though, just not great. And I think they'll be a fun watch. So there's always something to that. All right. Last but not least.
Least.
Yes, very least. Arizona sits at 2.5 wins. Can they get there? Sadly, I wanted to give them 3, but I could not find it. Supposedly everybody likes Jed Fish coming in there.
I don't like
Pete
much
Carroll's
about Jed Fish
kid
here.
is coming in there, but I don't know if you can win games because a coach and a coordinator have come in there.
Well, this team
and are likable.
This team has gone through one too many changes this year. They were 0-5 last year. Spread offense, Kevin Sumlin, run him out of town.
Well, it's not just that. Rich Rodriguez before him also ran the spread offense.
Now they're bringing Jed Fish in, who wants 35% of his snaps to be under center. Just completely changed up the entire coaching staff. Brought in some different personnel out of the transfer portal. I think it's going to take too long to figure this thing out. You're talking different blocking schemes. You go from no tight end sets to 2 tight end sets. So it's going to be quite different. And this team at most 2 wins.
Yes, I had them at 2.
I'm taking the under.
I had them at 2, and I have them on the under as well.
And that's if they perform better in a couple of games.
I will be very interested to see how they progress in a couple of years, to see if they can sort of build this into an NFL style offense, because they have not really been able to have a ton of success running the spread. So we'll see if sort of like Oregon has done, where they sort of switched gears. They brought in a lot of offensive and defensive linemen play, sort of more an NFL style, or should I say pro style of game. So we'll see if Arizona can do that. This will not be the year they do it, mixed with their probably inadequate skill position players and defense. Their schedule is very difficult.
Yes.
BYU, San Diego State, at Oregon, UCLA, at Colorado, Washington, at USC. That's not a great start to the year. There are not a lot of wins there.
I think Northern Arizona is the only one.
Other than the Northern Arizona that I skipped over. But then you even go there past Washington. It's at USC, it's Cal, it's Utah, it's at Washington State, it's at Arizona State. I was being nice to give them 2 wins, but they very easily can be a 1-win team here. So will be interesting to watch them progress, but this is not the year to watch them progress. I think next year to see if they can get.
Yeah, I think it's just too many pieces to get set and into play that it's going to take some time.
Yeah. All right. So Pac12, who you got winning this title here?
In the championship game, I like Utah versus Oregon. I'd have to give it to Oregon. I think they're just far and away the better team here, especially in the trenches.
I'm going to go with Washington here. I think their schedule just lends itself to it. And I think the Pac-12 South will beat each other up a little bit. I think there's pretty much too easy a ride for Oregon and Washington to get in there, and they'll be a little bit fresher come Pac-12 championship game. So I'm going to lead towards Washington there. plus 350. Not too bad to have a hold of. All right. So that makes up for our Mountain West and Pac-12. We'll be back next week. We're getting into the Big 12 and the ACC. Throw in a couple of the independents in there. That'll be our preview next week. Are you excited for next week?
I'm ready
Dynamite?
for it. We're only a couple weeks away now.
Only a couple of weeks away. I think 1.5 weeks away from week 0 games.
Yeah.
If anyone's going to watch those,
I'll
might
be
tune
watching
in
them.
a little bit. Maybe have a couple little picks on
Have
those
some
games.
picks, definitely.
All right. So be sure to join us next week for the Big 12 and the ACC. Also be sure to look out for our NFL preview pod. Winning Daily will continue to come out as more and more bets are able to be made. We haven't had enough bets the last couple of days to have any Winning Daily pods, unless you want a 30-second show of me picking 2 baseball games. But be sure to be on the lookout. Be sure to like and subscribe all of Green White Network shows. That's our show, and we're out.
Greenlight Network presents Football Time.